This week, it's Double Interview Monday. First, we welcome Meritt Maxim, Vice President and Research Director at Forrester, to discuss what cybersecurity technologies to prioritize in 2023. Next, Ralph Loos, Head of Services Strategy at ExtraHop, joins us to discuss Achieving Alchemy. What does an actual XDR approach look like? Business Security Weekly starts now.
This is Security Weekly, for security professionals, by security professionals. Broadcasting live from G-Unit Studios in Rhode Island, it's the show where we explore the business of security to improve the security of business. Your trusted source for actionable insights on leadership, communication, and innovation. Get ready for Business Security Weekly.
The cybersecurity landscape is full of single solution providers, making it easy for unexpected cyber threats to sneak through the cracks. That's why Forrester is creating a stronger, simpler strategy for protection, one that increases your security maturity while decreasing the operational burden that comes with it. This is all possible thanks to Forrester's best-in-class portfolio and deep bench of expert problem solvers. Forrester's integrated, scalable solutions help customers face their toughest challenges with confidence. Learn more at securityweekly.com/Forrester. The working world is open like never before, collaborating constantly across countless platforms at the intersection of communications, people, and data. The solution? Work Protected. Work Protected enables you with a security solution that connects all the dots. One partner. Integrated, intelligent, and intuitive. Mimecast. Work Protected with intelligent email and collaboration security only from Mimecast. Visit securityweekly.com/Mimecast to learn more. Managing and protecting the world's grueling number of endpoints, enabling Tanium's customers to see, control, and protect every endpoint everywhere. Tanium's mission is to provide certainty in uncertain times with the industry's only converged endpoint management. Trusted by the U.S. military and the majority of the Fortune 100, today, Tanium helps manage and protect nearly 30 million endpoints. Tanium, the power of certainty. Visit securityweekly.com/Tanium to learn more. How is your business staying one step ahead of cyber criminals? Secure your email, applications, network, and data with Barracuda. Protect your business and go from zero to security in no time flat. Whether your team is working in one location or many, Barracuda has solutions that are easy to buy, deploy, and use. Learn how Barracuda can protect your business against ransomware, phishing, and other cyber attacks. Visit securityweekly.com/Barracuda. That's securityweekly.com/Barracuda. Barracuda, your journey secured.
Welcome to Business Security Weekly. This is episode number 284, recorded November 7th, 2022. I am your host, Matt Alderman. Joining remotely are my co-hosts this week. First, Mr. Jason Albuquerque. Welcome, Jason.
Hey, Matt. Did you see my Patriots score? We finally actually had a game where I didn't have to sit on the edge of my seat and worry about the score. 26-3, Patriots Colts.
So let's see. Sunday was bye week for Cleveland, Denver, and Dallas. Yeah. I didn't even watch football on Sunday.
You didn't have to worry about football.
Right. Exactly right. Also joining again from Idaho, Mr. Tyler Robinson. Tyler, always a pleasure.
Thanks. Those Spuds this year, they're really doing pretty good.
Yeah? They got the little eyes on them?
I'm kidding. Yeah, we're going to have a football team someday. As soon as we hit 1 million people in the state, we'll have a football team.
Okay. Yeah, but plenty of potatoes, right? So we're good. Follow us on LinkedIn for updates across your organization, show highlights, and more. You can find us by searching for Security Weekly Productions. Meritt Maxim leads a team of analysts who provide research and advisory services that address the needs of security and risk professionals. His team focuses on identity and access management, endpoint security, threat intelligence, and vulnerability management strategies and technologies. Previously, Meritt was a principal analyst on the security and risk team, focusing on identity and access best practices and technologies, as well as physical security and Internet of Things security. He continues to help clients address their IAM and physical security needs, map out customer requirements and strategies, and navigate the IAM technology and services landscape. Meritt, welcome to Business Security Weekly.
Thanks for having me again, Matt. I guess we last spoke in June in person back at RSA, so glad to be here again.
Yes, it's great to be back in person. It was fun to be there and see you. Those were much shorter segments. We're going to go longer today. I have to start with identity and access management, though. A lot of activity in the space. Thoma Bravo, I think, 2 weeks ago, announced their acquisition of ForgeRock. That is now 3 identity and access management vendors pulled out of the public market and taken back private. Ping, SailPoint, and now ForgeRock. What's going on in the identity space? I'm seeing a lot of movement there lately.
Yeah, it has been an interesting few months for sure. And I'd say at the first, my first kind of thought is that I think this 2022 is the year that the public equity markets finally gave up on identity and access management in terms of trying to understand and actually see value in it. I mean, we all know that the cybersecurity space has been hot. Investors have been clamoring for it, but identity has always been somewhat different, a little bit more complex, harder to deploy, and doesn't necessarily have the hypersonic growth that other segments of cybersecurity have had. And even at this point, Okta is about one of the only few remaining kind of pure plays left, and their stock's been hammered this year as well. So and you look both in Ping and ForgeRock's case, and even SailPoint, they were bought at a very nice premium, so they help meet investor demand. But I think it's indicative that for better or for worse, the kind of pure play publicly traded identity company is a fairly rare creature these days for whatever reason. So I think that's one thing. I think the other thing, kind of as a backdrop to that, is it does, I think, reflect, for those who don't know, that private equity is and has been reshaping the enterprise security software market for a while, and these deals are just the latest example that firms like Thoma Bravo, which have a significant amount of capital to invest, they're under pressure from their limited partners to go out and find deals, and they had prior experience with having owned SailPoint before they went public, and I think in their case, they see good value here. Now the real question is, and where you're driving is, what's the future going to hold, right? Because PE firms ultimately bring these companies in their portfolio and then decide what to do next to them. And certainly there's a considerable amount of overlap between the Ping and ForgeRock product lines. And so what is this going to look like? Is this going to be spun out as a new entity with a kind of a new IM suite in the future? Or are they going to try to, rationalize parts of it and sell a piece of it? I think we're still a little early to say, but definitely I think a lot of changes potentially in store for customers of any of those solutions. Those products aren't going away. There's still a lot of value and need for them, but I think the underlying organizational model there is going to shift. And of course, certainly if Thoma Bravo is looking to, as all PE firms are looking to actually generate a return in the current economic conditions, it's not likely that they're going to be trying to sell that portfolio anytime soon. They have to wait for markets to recover. So I'd say you're probably 2 years out before you might see changes. But I do think there is going to be a lot of reassessment going on within those portfolio companies and with other privately held companies as well that may try to do similar things because going private does bring some benefits in terms of reducing some of the transparency around your financials, and maybe allows you to bring some more operational discipline to make your company more efficient. So,
yeah, I've seen this play. Oh, go ahead, Tyler.
I was going to say, do you think the identity space is one of the few places that this might work? When you start to talk about ingesting 3 companies, the integration in order to make that a viable product that is actually functionable for the end user, are we going to see a better product come out of this because identity has the capabilities to do that a little bit simpler than some of the other solutions?
Yeah, I mean, it's a fair question, and it's really been the question for as long as the identity space has been around, which is the best of breed versus suite approach, right? And if you go back 10 years ago, vendors definitely pursued the suite approach. You had IBM, you had Oracle, you had CA, even had a Novell in there for a while, Microsoft, that were basically trying to go to market with a all-you-can-eat. We do everything from privileged identity management, access management, multi-factor authentication, and pure plays like Ping, like ForgeRock, like SailPoint still had a place in the marketplace. And I think ultimately, if you look at kind of where those suite vendors ended up, the kind of pure play argument probably won out because that's ultimately how companies deploy. They deploy things on a transactional basis. They don't try to do identity all at once. They don't try to do access management, SSO, multi-factor authentication, and say provisioning all at once. So I think that worked against the suite vendor. But now that Thoma Bravo has these companies in our portfolio, is the question: are we now going to see a suite return back to market? And the reality is, and I know this from my pre-Forrester experience, that integrating components within an IAM stack is not trivial engineering work. There's a lot of value to be derived there, but it's not a simple task. And so if that is in fact a direction that, say, Thoma Bravo wants to take with their portfolio companies, they can certainly do that, but that's going to take time. And I think those more experienced CISOs who've lived through that past experience are they going to need, I think, a higher bar is going to be set for them to kind of get the validation that if we do get a new suite, that it is in fact works better and is actually not just a repeat of what was done previously, which ended up in a lot of cases not being as perhaps as effective as it would have been delivered.
Yeah, we know the challenge. Go, Jason.
No, I was just going to say, over the course of the last couple of years, as executive leaders in the security and risk space, we've been looking to consolidate our tools down, right? But we're in a new time. We're in a time now where we're being scrutinized on our budgets. We're being asked to do more with less. We're being asked to consolidate and adopt more of the technologies that we have. Are they a little bit too late to the game? Because we've been looking at these ecosystems and these suites for a couple of years now. Is that really going to be the play? Do they have 2-3 years to build out a suite? I mean, from my perspective, I'm looking at that now. My customers are looking at consolidation and building those ecosystems now.
Yeah, I mean, I think the CISOs can still be sold on the potential for a suite. To my point about how they deploy stuff individually. So if there's at least, and I think the difference is when it was a individual vendor, I think resources may have been a bit more constrained. Under a PE arrangement, theoretically, there might be more leverage that the investor can deliver to actually drive those integrations. So even if the suite isn't going to be ready next quarter, if you can see some progress that's actually a direction that's headed and gives you some confidence that it is in fact going to be a reality, then I think that actually gives rise to it. Of course, the other factor is wherever there's a product overlap, now that's where you face the internal political battle about, which product, which policy engine do we run with, and what does that mean if you are a customer of the product that's on the losing end of that discussion, and what's the migration? So there's also that aspect. There's the integration within the platform, but then also you have to plan a migration path for customers, and that can be a real challenge. And there's often a very long tail of that about how you get those customers of the losing platform onto the newer suite. So I think if it gets past 2 years, you're probably right. It's not going to be as interesting to people, and you need to see some real tangible differences, I'd say, in the next the next 12 months. The other kind of key point I would note is that if you go by PitchBook, the amount of what they call dry powder, in other words, capital that has yet to be invested in the PE space, is still over $1 trillion. It's actually 3 or 4x the actual amount of VC dry powder that's out there. So, and that's not just Thoma Bravo, that's plenty of other firms. So I think whether Thoma Bravo makes more deals or other PE firms get involved, I think we haven't seen the end of this. And so if you're a privately held IM company that's doing well, but don't really feel you have an exit strategy because an IPO may not be practical, we may see much more of those kinds of deals over the next, say, 6 to 9 months as the PE firms look for places to invest their money.
Yeah, I see those in adjacency markets as well. I mean, we're seeing some of this in the email security space, security awareness and training, KnowBe4 just coming out from PE. So we're seeing this kind of playbook play out in other areas as well, Meritt. I just wanted to hammer in, kind of hone in on the identity and access management space, because I think it's just really interesting to have 3 large players all under one PE firm. But you're right. PEs have the money to invest. They could tuck in other pieces through acquisition, come back out. I think the fear I have is we don't want to turn them back into the big platform vendors like IBM and CA that were stale and not really innovating, because we don't want to go that direction either. We still want innovation in this space if we're going to go solve the broader identity and access management problem.
Yeah, and I'd say that the other, right, you have to, a PE firm, ultimately, they buy and sell companies. I think the other kind of question for me is, let's assume for sake that Thoma Bravo is not going to do the suite route. Then the question is, okay, who would be a buyer for these portfolio companies? And I think that's the other problem is I don't think the list of kind of vendors that would have an interest in this is small, because for a company, the companies that would want this would be ones that probably don't do identity at all and want to use that acquisition to enter in that space. And I think that's an expensive and potentially a higher risk opportunity. So, all of the major big platform plays have identity stacks. So I think that's the other thing that may force Thoma Bravo's hand to some extent, that they kind of continue down that suite approach, and then try to return it to market as a new entity. Because I'm just not sure how many kind of suitors are out there that would want to buy either all or some of those components. They probably exist, but it's a shorter list than it would have been, say, 10 years ago, where there were a lot more companies that didn't have an identity capability at all.
Yeah, absolutely. So Jason talked about it. Consolidation is already happening. This isn't probably what most CISOs wanted, which was taking 3 companies out of the public market. How does this change strategy for 2023? And this is going to tie into some of the things you've been working on with the planning guide. Like, what does something like this now change from a budget perspective when you start thinking about your plans for 2023? Does this impact the way you make investments in any of these 3 vendors on the identity and access management space, for example? And then what other kind of consolidation areas could you look at in your planning for next year?
Yeah, I mean, I think a couple of things would be, first, I think it's worth taking a step back and looking at kind of your overall strategy here, and not to make immediate rash decisions like say, oh, this company got taken private, so we don't want them as a supplier. I mean, all these entities are going to continue to exist as going concerns with product engineering, sales, and support, and all those other things. But you do at least need to think about, future, kind of future cast, like what does our environment want to look like a year from now? What does that vendor procurement environment look like? And then plan accordingly. So from our perspective, we haven't seen a lot of companies that are, say, drastically cutting their budgets in response to these kinds of market events. I think they're kind of taking a wait and see, probably keeping budgets flat, particularly within identity. Again, a space I know well, it is so core to kind of how companies operate, particularly with the kind of surge of remote and hybrid work, that they can't just turn their back and say, we're not going to support or invest in this. So I think these initiatives will still continue to get funded and supported. They might not get rolled out at the pace that perhaps they might have been when the economic conditions were perhaps a bit more optimistic. But I do think identity is still going to be very much kind of part of the company's plan. And frankly, there still are a large number of companies that are still very immature with that IAM, that have done very little. Maybe they've done multi-factor authentication, maybe some SSO, but really haven't done a whole lot. And so there still is a lot of greenfield opportunities for vendors out there to capture, because this is not a saturated market by any shape of imagination. So I think that will continue to drive growth. And if you are one of those companies that is at a greenfield, I would say you need to plow ahead, whether you're just still planning a POC or to just do something in 2023. You shouldn't be placing these identity things on hold. We know from whether it's the Verizon data or our own data that the amount of breaches that are a result of credentials continues to be very high, and credentials obviously tie in very closely with access management. So your identity controls need to be strong and effective, and you can really only get that by deploying a commercial solution. So I think that's would be, you'd be penny wise and pound foolish to just say, well, we're uncertain about the market, so we're just going to put our IAM plans on hold. I think you need to continue to move forward on those. Maybe bring the pace of those back a little bit to maybe keep the spending more in line, but pulling the plug on those issues, I think would be a mistake right now, kind of given the importance of identity for most modern enterprises.
So like I had mentioned earlier, I mean, our budgets are getting scrutinized more and more, right? Leadership and CFOs are looking at us to say, listen, where can you realize economies of scale? Where can you maximize adoption? So aside from identity management, where do you see in 2023 with, flat budgets or maybe even budgets that are being scrutinized and decreased? Where do you see organizations investing in 2023? I mean, we're hitting a high inflation period, potentially a recessionary time. Leaders are starting to really put a lot of oversight on budgeting. Where do you see us investing?
Yep,
Spending wise.
And the whole kind of idea behind the planning guide format, which we used to have at Forrester and was dormant for a year or so, and we've resurrected it, was to actually take the kind of collective perspective of our entire analyst team and basically come out and say, here are the tech that we think have high value and high potential, high impact, and those are the ones you should focus on. And then these are ones that maybe you maintain or ones you experiment with, and you should have a kind of a mix of all those. But certainly ones that we see as high priority, things like multi-factor authentication, right? I mean, what I talked about. I mean, that's probably still one of the best returns you can get for your security dollar by minimizing reliance on passwords and going to a stronger form of MFA, and potentially moving towards a more passwordless or kind of FIDO type phishing, more resistant version of authentication. I think that's obviously an area to continue to invest in. I think some other areas that we see still a lot of value in, and again, these may not seem exciting or kind of bleeding edge, but basic things like IR exercises and or purple teaming type exercise, like understanding your actual vulnerabilities and making sure that you've prepared and understand what to do if in fact you are breached and what your response has been. We've seen a couple of breaches this year in different industries where the response from the supplier has been good. In some cases, it's been not so good, and I think consumers or enterprises are forgiving, or I'd say are less forgiving of a poor response than they are of the actual breach itself. So again, that's the kind of thing where it's just tabletop exercises stuff like that. But I think that's an area that has a lot of value. And then within like the application development space, things like things that deal with API security, given how much businesses interact from a B2B perspective and the importance of APIs, and also how those APIs are vulnerable. So investing in that, and even that also could include things that do bot management, right? We're getting close to the holiday shopping season where bots or things like that play a big role. Last year it was the PS5, right? And no one could get one because the bots were kind of taking over the e-commerce site. So that's another area that, again, has a strong kind of security feature, but it also yields a strong consumer benefit, because if you're able to kind of block the bots, now you're actually able to allow the legitimate customers to actually go in and be able to purchase what they want, and so whatever they want for the holidays, they're actually able to get. So those are a couple of other areas that we see a lot of value in, and ones we certainly encourage our clients to continue to invest in going forward.
Do you see a lot of adoption into the MSSP space or outsourcing some of the NOC SOC roles, where they may be a little bit less apt to hire people based on kind of the budget and some of the forecasting that's happening currently? Do you see any of that shift from an outsourcing standpoint?
So at some point, yes, but of course, and the traditional kind of response to going to a managed service was that usually, we can't find the staff to do it ourselves, so let's go to a service provider. Now, the problem with that dynamic is that the managed service security providers have the same staffing issues, because they're also struggling to find people. Now, they may be able to manage it through more kind of round, follow the sun kind of types of models, but I think that is a something to be aware of if you're going to go to a service provider. That if you're going out purely for staffing reasons, that is not necessarily a guarantee that it's going to be significantly better than what you are doing yourselves. And so I think this is why you see the traditional kind of MSSP model somewhat being changed, so away from just being something that's an alert factory that just sends alerts to clients, into things that more focus on more specialized things like MDR as an example, or like SOC as a service, where again there's a little bit higher value by the MSSP and also by what the client receives. So I think that is starting to play out, and I think you'll start to see MSSPs start to specialize more in those areas where they really do have some differentiation, and try to stay away from the kind of commodity, kind of traditional monitoring kind of stuff that many of them have initially got in the market for.
Security having to prove that they add value to the business, right? The things we talk about all the time.
Yep.
Now.
What a concept.
Have to step up, One other item. I mean, we talked about, part of the budgeting process is not only looking at your budget and saying, where am I going to invest next year? It's also looking at the budget saying, where do I need to start divesting? Where do I start? Where do I start pulling money away in investing in different areas? What are you seeing trends right now with security leaders as far as technologies they're starting to pull away from?
Yeah, so I think the kind of key word were things that we see to pull away or areas that we would say you could consider adjusting. Anything that kind of is a standalone function that does only kind of a specific thing. And one example would be a standalone DLP. Which has been around for a long time. Again, provides value in terms of tracking sensitive data, things of that sort. But what we've seen happen in the last few years is that DLP capabilities are increasingly being built into email security or cloud security gateways or other, even like Office 365 has some basic capabilities now. And so the need for you to have a standalone kind of dedicated DLP solution may be minimized. You may be able to get, equivalent or close to equivalent capabilities from an existing solution you're already using. And then that reduces it reduces the amount of vendors you have to manage, but it may also allow you to save some budget without unnecessarily exposing you because the capabilities are there. It's really no different than what you look at, what Microsoft has done like with Defender, where, over time, Defender capabilities have gotten stronger. And for many companies, if they can get enough coverage from Defender, they may not even, they may be willing to go without an additional third-party endpoint product because they think the protection they get from Defender is good enough, and they can use that money that they would have spent on an endpoint solution in something else. So I think that would be one area where I think companies could start to think of pulling back from, given that those capabilities may already be delivered through something that they're already using.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. I mean, again, it's the adoption of the existing tech stack, right? So if you're already paying for certain licensing and you can get equivalent or better feature functionality and protection out of what you're already paying for, why have the overlap, right? I'm a big fan of zero-based budgeting. And zero-based budgeting means every year you look at your budget from the bottom up and you figure out where there's overlap, where you can find consolidation, where you can realize economies of scale, obviously for the betterment of the business. But this is where we as security professionals need to step up and show that we're fiscally responsible, right? We're business executives. Mm-hmm. We're here to make sure we're doing good by the company from a security risk perspective, but also a financial perspective.
So obviously Microsoft is a really interesting use case, right? When we met with our CISO advisors about a month ago, one of the things we heard is if you're an E5 customer, you're getting Windows Defender at the endpoint, you're getting Sentinel from a logging perspective, you're getting email security out of O365, and those are areas where people are looking to make more, use what they have in their E5 contracts or even their E3s, which has a few features less in it, as a way to look at other, like, can I not buy these other solutions and then use those dollars that they free up into some of these other investment areas that you talked about, Meritt. So, I mean, we're hearing it from the CISOs as well that, Microsoft and a Microsoft E5 contract is really attractive for some to consolidate capabilities. I'm curious about some of the other legacy technologies that we've been spending money on, like just antivirus by itself, just things like standalone IPS or some of the network stuff. Like where are people in with those solutions, and where are we seeing spend? Are we going to see spending start to fall in some of those areas? I don't need an AV vendor because I'm going full in on a full blown EDR. Like is that shift already happened, or is it still happening?
I think it's, in the case of like EDR, I think it's still happening. And certainly it's been further complicated that many of the vendors that were traditional endpoint providers, right, they now do EDR. So they further, they see that market evolution and they're responding to that, but that further complicates for you as a customer, when they've got both, like what do I need both? Do I need one or the other? Like what's the, and that's going to have to get shaken out, going forward. But I do think, things that are worth considering getting away from. Endpoint would be one area. We already mentioned Defender, where I think over time, that's the kind of thing where you may be able to reduce the vendor footprint you have in that space just because the capabilities that you are realizing you can get from somewhere else. But I think like other technology, you mentioned like IPS and it's been around for a while. Something like NAC as an example. Network access control, it's been around for a while. Guess kind of depending who you talk to, some people are very bullish on it, others are not. But I think in the kind of if you follow the kind of zero trust architecture where you don't trust anything and you always verify, the kind of micro segmentation may make some sense in some areas, but a kind of full blown NAC may not be as crucial, and that's where you see things like zero trust network access and combined like with multi-factor authentication as a way to kind of deliver some of the same benefits without the kind of resulting kind of overhead that can come with NAC. So that's another technology like the DLP that I referenced that I think is potentially losing interest in that money that was spent there could be invested into somewhere else and still give you the kind of same functionality that you may be realizing with the existing solution today.
Do you see some of the same things with like VPN investments and again, kind of moving that to more of a ZTNA, zero trust network access, or a SASE kind of model, right? Same kind of thing there.
Yeah. And that's also that's one case where I think there is you actually have some hard dollars you can start to actually compare to, because you're paying a fee for a VPN, and then you compare that to what you might get with a zero trust network access, but you get a lot more of the zero trust network access beyond just the VPN. And when you factor in, particularly with hybrid work, VPNs may introduce some latency and network issues that may be challenging for people that kind of way. So yeah, getting rid of the VPN and place something else, that's something that, again, there are options there that give you the same functionality, but also present you with additional benefits and may even provide a better user experience. So in a case like that migration choice is straightforward, and we certainly see a lot of customers that often their kind of journey into zero trust actually starts with the killing the VPN. Like that's actually the first kind of domino to fall, if you will, because that's a fairly tangible thing. And a lot of users hate the VPN; it doesn't work, or it's just frustrating for them. And so there's a pretty compelling business case can be built on that. And I think that's driving a lot of the growth in that market, and we'll see more of that going forward.
Awesome. Meritt, thank you so much for joining us on Business Security Weekly.
Thanks for having me. Enjoyed talking to you guys.
We'll take a quick break, then welcome Rob Flos from ExtraHop to discuss the transformation of XDR.